It's a rapper called X. I kind of thought of him as a hero because he changed. He used to be the bad guy in the music industry, and people will only get him into, like, people will only respect him out of fear and everything. But he started to change and love his fans and just started being more positive, looking at the world in a different perspective. So I like him because of that. Yeah, it's one of my heroes.
My mom.
Why?
She makes it to where all the stress that the world would give me is not as big as it seems. That it's just itty bitty and God is bigger.
My hero would definitely have to be my grandfather, just because if you don't know me, I don't have a fatherly figure, and he's always stepped up and been that for me, and he's helped me through so many stages of my life, and he's like my best friend, and I just really look up to him and I love him, so that's my hero.
A hero in my life is my dad, because he's taught me that hard work always pays off, and he's always working the best he can to make everything run correctly.
Hey guys, welcome to our YouTube service. So glad that you chose to tune in tonight and prioritize Jesus. That is an awesome thing. You know, we're starting a new series called Heroes tonight. You know, we are fascinated by superheroes. Just in the last few years, Avengers, Dark Knight, and Iron Man series have grossed over $3.5 billion. And they keep making them, because we are enamored with heroes, the idea of heroes. So over the next few weeks, we'll unpack this concept, but first we'll discover why heroes matter to us. You know, during this series, we'll be digging into the lives of several people whose stories are found in the book of Judges in the Old Testament. And in case you aren't familiar with the landscape of Israel during this period of history, let's first set the stage. The Israelites, God's chosen race of people, have escaped slavery in Egypt and begun to take over the promised land that would eventually become Israel. Since leaving Egypt, they've been led by Moses, then by Joshua, who both struggled to keep the people focused on following God on their journey. And they're about to claim the land God promised them. Joshua died, and things got incredibly dark. So let's pick it up in Judges chapter 2, verses 10 through 15. It says, after that whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. Then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord and served the Baals. They forsook the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshiped various gods of the people around them. They aroused the Lord's anger because they forsook him and served Baal and the Ashtoreths. In his anger against Israel, the Lord gave them into the hands of the raiders who plundered them. He sold them into the hands of their enemies all around, whom they were no longer able to resist. Whenever Israel went out to fight, the hand of the Lord was against them to defeat them, just as he had sworn to them. They were in great distress. Not a pretty picture, right? Imagine here an Old Testament version of that fictional city of Gotham. I mean, it's unruly, chaotic. The bad guys are running the place without justice. I mean, it's an absolute mess. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? Really, if you think about it. Israel's repetitive turning from God had resulted in God giving them exactly what they asked for: life without him. The last sentence in verse 15 says it all. They were in great distress. I don't know about you, but sometimes in our life, we can also feel like we're in great distress. Don't we look at our surroundings and choose to elevate other things and people as if they were God? Don't we feel the same distress when these decisions lead us to a life outside God's authority and protection? Hold on to that thought, and we'll circle back around to it in a minute. But even in the mess, the Israelites have created for themselves God had a great plan to introduce these heroes in this dark time. So let's continue with Judges 2 and see what happens. It says in verses 16 through 19, "Then the Lord raised up judges who saved them out of the hands of the raiders. Yet they would not listen to their judges, but prostituted themselves to other gods and worshipped them. They quickly turned from the ways of their ancestors who had been obedient to the Lord's commands. Whenever the Lord raised up a judge for them, he was the judge and saved them out of the hands of their enemies as long as the judge lived. For the Lord relented because of their groaning under those who oppressed and afflicted them. But when the judge died, the people returned to the ways even more corrupt than those of their ancestors, following other gods and serving and worshiping them. They refused to give up their evil practices and stubborn ways." In the midst of the chaos and misery that marked Israel's existence, God raised up judges who would save them out of the hands of their enemies. So over the next few weeks, we're going to discover some of these amazing people, some who you may have heard or maybe never even heard of before. God raised up judges and heroes for Israel. But here's what we need to learn first from the Judges chapter 2. And this is something that may be hard for you to swallow. We are the Israelites, and we need a hero. Think back to the last superhero movie you watched. Was it Superman, Spider-Man, the Avengers? How often do you watch those movies and choose to relate to the screaming bystander? Never. We want to be the hero in the story. When I was a kid, my brother and I would spend hours reenacting the old Superman films, taking turns being Superman. One of us would throw rocks, pillows, while the other would punch them away with ease and rescue Lois Lane and save Metropolis. And I can only assume that this phenomenon is also true for girls. We always wanted to be the hero, the focus of every story, especially our own. But the truth is, our lives are usually more closely mirror that of the Israelites. Today's hero from the book of Judges only has 19 verses written about his life in the Bible. But in these 19 verses, we're going to see some of the most unique ninja skills you could ever imagine. As we talked about, for a season in the Old Testament, God's people kept turning away from him and doing what they wanted instead of what he wanted. They would inevitably get in trouble with the neighboring nations and need to be saved. That's where the judges or the heroes came in. In Judges chapter 3, we meet a man named Ehud. Yes, I agree, that's a very strange name, but maybe that's the least strange thing about his life. So let's jump in and see what happened to him, starting in verse 12 of Judges 3. It says, "Again the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and because they did this evil, the Lord gave Eglon, king of Moab, power over Israel, getting the Amorites and the Amalekites to join him. Eglon came and attacked Israel, and they took possession of the city of palms. The Israelites were subject to Eglon, the king of Moab, for 18 years. As usual, Israel was in trouble, this time with the country of Moab. Their king Eglon controlled Israel for 18 years until God called on Ehud. In Judges 3, verse 16 and 17, it says, "Again the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and he gave them a deliverer. Ehud, a left-handed man, the son of Gera, the Benjamite. The Israelites sent him with tribute to Eglon, the king of Moab. Now Ehud made this great long sword about a cubit long, which he strapped to his right thigh under his clothing. He presented the tribute to King Eglon of Moab, who was a very fat man." All right, time out. Did we read that right? The Bible, God's holy word, just used up space in the holiest text to tell us that the king was a very fat man? I hope they explain more of this later in their story. But did you notice what we learned about Ehud? He was left-handed. That actually is a pretty big deal. In this time period, it was not considered a good thing to be left-handed. Actually, you were seriously looked down if you were not right-hand dominant. So we know that Ehud is left-handed and the king is fat. Great. Let's keep going and see what happens next. It says, after Ehud had presented the tribute, he sent on their way those who had carried it. But on reaching the stone images near Gilgad, he himself went back to Eglon and said, "Your Majesty, I have a secret message for you." The king said to his attendants, "Leave us." And they all left. Ehud then approached him while he was sitting alone in the upper room of his palace and said, "I have a message from God for you." As the king rose from his seat, Ehud reached with his left hand, drew the sword from his right thigh, and plunged it into the king's belly. Even the handle sunk in after the blade, and his bowels were discharged. Ehud did not pull out the sword, and the fat closed over it. Okay, seriously, what just happened? Ehud pulls a total ninja move, sneaks close to the king, and stabs him. Then some other stuff's happened, though we don't really need to talk about, right? Did you notice where Ehud's sword was hidden? On his right thigh. Since he was left-handed, it was the natural place for it to be. But let's continue. In verses 23 and 26, then Ehud went out onto the porch. He shut the doors of the upper room behind him and locked them. After he had gone, the servants came and found the doors of the upper room locked. They said he must be relieving himself in the inner room of the palace. They waited to the point of embarrassment, but when he did not open the doors of the room, they took a key and unlocked them. There they saw their lord fallen to the floor dead. While they waited, Ehud got away. He passed by the stone images and escaped to Sarah. This ninja move just keeps getting better. Ehud sneaks out the back door, and when the guards finally come to check to see why the king is taking so long in the bathroom, I don't know, do you think they noticed the smell or something? They find King Eglon dead, and Ehud with a massive head start back to his army. And then now look at verses 26 and 30. It says, when he arrived there, he blew a trumpet in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites went down from him from the hills with leading them. Follow me, he ordered, for the Lord has given Moab, your enemy, into your hands. So they followed him down and took possession of the fords of the Jordan that led to Moab. They allowed no one to cross over. At that time, they struck down about 10,000 Moabites, all vigorous and strong. Not one escaped. That day, Moab was made subject to Israel, and the land had peace for 80 years. Okay, what a great hero story. And if you haven't read this account of Ehud before, it's probably an unexpected one too. Ehud rose to the occasion and pulled out some major ninja skills to save Israel once again. But you know why this encounter is so special? God used Ehud's uniqueness to save Israel. Back in verse 15, we read that he was a Benjamite. Well, that word literally and actually means son of right hand. So for a guy whose last name is right hand to be left hand, he was probably the most popular guy in town. He was probably an outcast, which why he might have been selected to take the bribe to the opposing king. Can't you see the Israelite leaders saying, just send Ehud, he's such a mess, they won't be threatened by him at all. But what the man saw is what man really saw as an obstacle, God used as a weapon. God used a guy who was unique. He was special. There was something that was true of only Ehud that set him apart. Perhaps in addition to being left-handed, he was also brave or obedient to God or passionate about Israel's freedom. We don't get all the details about his life, but let's turn to the story of your life. What makes you unique? What relationships do you have that God has allowed you to form in preparation for your conversations that can change lives? I mean, what expertise do you have that gives you a unique platform to share with others what your relationship with God is all about? What pain have you gone through that you have spent years questioning why it happened to you, that now gives you a chance to care for someone else by honestly saying, I know how bad you hurt, that this situation has hurt you because it's hurt me too. Even if you think you aren't special or unique in any good or useful ways, the truth is that God created you for a purpose and with a plan. God used Ehud's uniqueness to save Israel. What does he want to do with your uniqueness? What does he want to have you do with the unique things and gifts that God has placed in your life? I truly believe that we ourselves have different people we can look at as heroes. There are people in our lives that have impacted us in a certain way, that have caused us to be better people, that have gave us courage to do things maybe we wouldn't even think of doing. And so because of these heroes in our lives, maybe we made steps forward. And I want to know, God wants to use you to be a hero. You know, we've been asking people, who are your heroes? And different people have given different people. And my question is, Who is going to say you are their hero? What about your life is going to impact somebody else? You know, all this stuff, everything that we look at, we got to realize one thing, that even though you have heroes and or you could be a hero to somebody, every one of us and every hero in our lives could possibly and will let us down or die. Just like the judges, everything was cool as long as they lived, but the moment they died, things changed. And that can be with our heroes too. That's why it's so important that if we are going to have one hero that stays consistent in our lives, it's got to be Jesus. Jesus has to be the ultimate hero of your life. He has to be the ultimate desire and the ultimate pursuit of your life. Because as you pursue him and allow him to be your hero, I guarantee you will be a hero to many other people in your life. So I just hope and encourage you. God wants to use your unique giftedness, abilities, and position in life to make a difference. But you know, we're going to look at so many different things, because after Ehud became Shagmar, the son of Agath, who struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad. And he too saved Israel. You know, it's interesting to me that Ehud, a left-handed guy whose story is colored with interesting details, but he's known for killing one guy, gets 19 verses in the chapter, yet here we have a guy who killed 600 people by himself with a piece of farm equipment, and he gets one verse. But I tell you, that one verse is impactful, and we'll look at him next week. So I just want to encourage you students, keep pressing into God. Make him the hero of your life, because God wants to use you to change others' lives. He wants to use you to bring other people into this great relationship that you have with Jesus. So God bless you. We'll see you next week. Hey, and also know we're going to be coming up with some Friday night socials. Be looking on Facebook and Instagram, because we're going to start getting together. We're going to start off with a pool party on June 26th. It's going to be awesome. So look for that information and begin to get back together, because we are family and you belong. God bless you. We'll see you next week.